Right, can everyone hear me okay?
Yep.
Perfect. All right, I'm going to share my screen. So just let me know if this works as well. Hang on, I'm just going to stop that. Give me a second. Probably should have done this while you guys were actually introducing each other. But anyway, we all learn. Sometimes technology plays nice and sometimes it does not. And of course, it has to be as well. I'm actually live on the Facebook group as well. Couldn't actually do it while I wasn't. Okay, I just need to be able to see my notes. All right, let me try sharing again.
Okay, we can see it now.
All right, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. All right, there was just a little bit of faffing around there. Okay, and you can see my screen. All right, so welcome everyone to the Advanced Goal Setting Workshop. Let me provide a little bit of context. So for those who don't know me, my name's Amy. I am an amateur competitive bodybuilder. I also work full-time in a mining company, and I also coach others as well towards health and fitness goals, and also sometimes high performance and business as well, depending on their needs. I've also developed after 2 years, finally developed my first online course and group coaching program, which is the Incredible You in 2022. So this is actually the first lesson of that course. I thought the best way to actually get people interested or to understand what the course is actually about is actually just to share the first lesson with you. So if you've joined, thank you for joining. If you're on the Zoom, welcome, thank you. We've actually already done introductions offline. For those of you who are listening in live, I will make sure that you get access to the Google Drive documents. I'll post a comment shortly when we get to that stage, if you want to pull down the resources and actually work through today's workshop. If you can also potentially comment under the video and just let us know who you are and where in the world you're from, and anything that you're hoping to get out of today's session, that would be great. Yeah, so that's really it. I guess we're already a few minutes in, so I might as well just actually get started. So this is lesson 1, setting infallible goals. And basically today, and I'll just zoom this in, we're going to cover quite a few things. So it is just for context as well. So this is actually a free 2-hour workshop. For those who are actually existing clients of mine, you'll actually stay on for a bonus hour, so we can actually work through in a little bit more detail some of the work sheets, the planner, and so on. And you'll also, by the end of this session, hopefully find someone in the group that, if they're open to it, can be your accountability buddy as well for the next 12 weeks. That doesn't detract from the group coaching sessions, and for some of you who have your individual one-on-one sessions, but it's just an extra way to, obviously help you track along your individual actions and your goals. So that's what we're doing. Of course, anyone else who is listening live, if you want to reach out to anyone in the community to actually be your accountability buddy, then by all means do so as well. All right, so today we're going to cover goals. We're actually going to break everything really down. It's going to seem a bit basic for the beginning, but I basically want to do some warm-up sets before we get into some heavy lifting, essentially, for today. And no apologies, I will be using some lifting puns as we go through. So yes, we're going to cover what goals are, why they're important, and the different types of goals, which is often a misunderstood or a little known fact around the type of goals and why that's important. We're going to touch a little bit on finding your true why in terms of, your why behind the why behind your why in the goals. So we're going to almost do like a 5 whys behind some of those goals that you think you want and what you really truly desire. We're going to focus a little bit on why decluttering can be important. Unfortunately, it's not going to be to the level of Marie Kondo. I love her, but I only have 3 hours, so that one might be something that you go and research a little bit later. We'll actually go through obviously the workbook and planner. There's also a bonus lesson, some activities, and there's some free gifts as well. So yeah, and for those catching the replay, hopefully you'll be able to just shoot through to those different sections if you just want to listen to part of that. And I will break this down to be audio only. So for those who want to catch the replay and just listen to it, or for those who want to go back and revisit some sections while you're actually going through your activities, then maybe that will help to guide you through those sections as well. All right. Well, before I start, let's open it up to the group. So for those in the Zoom chat, what are goals?
From my perspective, it's something that you want to not necessarily master, but attain in your life, something that you want to achieve. Yeah.
Yeah, perfect. And why are they important?
Oh yeah, you go.
For me personally or in general?
Just up to you. Yeah, whichever one you want to share.
For me personally, it's because I'm naturally very attainment driven, and goals help me stay focused and give me purpose and meaning. And then without them, it would negatively impact my mental health, I think.
Yeah. And I think we need to reframe it. I think that's really great self-awareness, but I think achievement orientation. You're definitely an achievement oriented person, which is great. So yeah, goals are particularly important. Thais, sorry, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, why are goals important? Because they give you a direction and sense of purpose in life, and instead of living life just with whatever life brings to you, you have a clear intention and direction of where you want to head, and then sort of go down that path, even though you don't know exactly how, but you know where you want to go. So yeah, that for me, that's why they're important.
Perfect. So I think this quote really summarizes, right? If you don't know where you're going, any road will get you there. So this is a quote that's often attributed to Lewis Carroll, who is obviously the author of Alice in Wonderland, Wonderworld. That's a new one. Yeah, so a pretty salient quote, but I just thought I'd share a fun fact as well, just to keep this a little bit lighter. So people sort of associate that quote with Lewis Carroll, but that doesn't actually appear in the book at all. That's actually a summary of the exchange. So the exchange is Alice saying to the Cheshire Cat, "Would you tell me, please, which way I ought to go from here?" "That depends a good deal on where you want to get to," said the Cheshire Cat. "I don't much care where," said Alice. "Then it doesn't matter which way you go," said the Cheshire Cat. "So long as I get somewhere," Alice added as an explanation. "Oh, you're sure to do that," said the cat, "if only you walk long enough." So there you go. Just recapping some childhood memories in case you loved watching some Disney films as I did. All right, so we shall move on. So yeah, you're 100% right, Kirsty and Thais. Yeah, basically we need to know where we're going, right? So goals can help us do that. And then if we think about it in terms of, if we want to make a change, right? It really helps us to clarify what's a nice to have and what do we really want. And we'll unpack that a little bit later on. But if you want to make a new habit stick, unless we're really clear on what we want, then we're just going to have a bunch of nice to haves and we're going to forget about them as soon as life gets busy, right? So we need to be clear on that part. All right. So what are goals? So I think we've covered that, but yeah, it's a desired idea of the future. Sorry, just bear with me for a second. it's an idea or a future result that a person or a group of people envision, plan and commit to achieve. And people usually endeavour to reach goals within a finite time or by deadlines, right? So it's one of the most important steps in developing new healthy habits. We obviously need to set goals. And the reason we do that, as I mentioned as well, is that goals keep you going when you want to quit, and they also give you something to celebrate when your hard work and dedication start to pay off, right? So that's why we want to have that. So it's a key step in towards building resilience, right? Like you can either be, especially if we think about in the current environment that we're in at the moment, we're all having a very shared experience with a significant amount of challenges due to the geopolitical climate, right? And if we don't have a clear direction on what we want to do, then that can become almost overwhelming. And you'll notice that a lot of people are saying that at the moment, right? They're feeling, a bit closed off. They're feeling overwhelmed. They're feeling low energy, all of those sorts of things. And I think that sometimes comes from us, focusing too much on the weight of the world, which are things that are outside of our control. So when we refocus on what's important to us and what we can control and what we want to work towards, it almost helps us just to get through, that really thick wall of heaviness that's around us at the moment. Does that make sense? Oh, great. Susan, we've got some video now. Nice for you to join us. Welcome. Awesome. Okay, so moving on. So the other thing is as well, right? So the goals that we set will be the difference between whether or not we succeed or not. And so I guess the key thing is, did you know that certain types of goals are going to gear you towards success, whilst others are potentially going to lead to more self-sabotage, right? So I'm just going to plant that in for now, and we'll unpack that one as we go through. So what are some of the thoughts? I mean, I know I've got some answers up here, but I'll just leave it to the room as well. So what do you think a good goal involves, or a well-formed goal? What are the elements of a well-formed goal?
Well, as you've got there, Amy, they do need to be specific, something that you can work towards in the future. And for me, it's always been the growth that you attain as you're going towards that. It just has to go under that heading of SMART.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, well said. So I think there's a couple of other things. So apart from, a lot of people will talk about having SMART goals, which is, from a practical point of view, absolutely, we do need that. But there's some subtler pieces as well that are kind of overlooked. And one of them is around making sure that it's stated in the positive. So it states, and what I mean by that is that we're stating what we want, not what we don't want. And I'll unpack that a little bit further. And one of the reasons is our brain isn't smart enough to actually understand the fillers around a word. So if we say, don't procrastinate, your brain basically only hears the word procrastinate. And so it goes, okay, I can do that. And then it'll figure out ways for you to procrastinate. So it's kind of a smart thing. It's also kind of a dumb thing, right? So we want to set ourselves up for success by just reframing the way that we look at things. We also want our goals to be initiated and maintained by ourselves, right? Because we don't want to rely on someone else changing, because that's outside of our control. So does that make sense? Yeah. A lot of people will sometimes try and go, they'll try and go, oh, well, if this person just did this, and it's like, well, you'll be waiting a really long time for that to happen, because that person wants to recognize that there's an issue, and two, wants to actually change for themselves, right? So we can't control what other people do, but we can control what we do. The other thing is as well, obviously, is we want to make sure that we take ownership of that goal, right? Because otherwise we're robbing ourselves of the opportunity to really own that goal and to be accountable for it, and then to feel like that we can celebrate that goal once we achieve it. And also we'll tend to resist it if it's given to us, right? So how many times have you, if you've ever worked in a corporation or a job or something like that, and they give you a performance goal without any context, and it seems unachievable, you automatically go to resist it. It's an organizational behavior fact, and yet we still do them. Anyway, I can't solve the world's problems right now. I can just focus on this, so I'll move on. So yeah, as we said, it needs to be achievable within time frame, because otherwise if we say, oh yeah, one day, well, one day isn't a defined term, and it's never going to happen unless we actually give ourselves a time frame. I don't know, and I don't know if you've ever noticed as well, but you will take as much time as you give yourself. Have you ever noticed how many times that you leave things to the absolute last minute, even though you've had 2 weeks to do something? Yeah. So yeah. So it's really funny as well. Like some goals were like, we want the instant results now, and then others where we know that we can do easily, we give ourselves more time and then wait to the last minute to do them anyway. So it's an interesting perspective that sometimes we just need to work with when we move our way through. Okay. And yeah, so again, and it has to be achievable within the actual time frame that you say as well. So I've had a lot of people, for example, that want to say to me that, you know, they want to get on stage within 6 months, for example, but they've had decades upon decades of compounding habits that work against potentially that goal. So, you know, on the balance of, well, if you think about, if you want to get the body of your life within 6 months, but you've spent 40 years, not exercising, then there's going to be a few challenges in doing that, right? Now, this bit is actually the one that's overlooked the most. So it's really important that when you're describing your goal and you have something designed for the future, that it has a specific sensory description to it. We want to know how it feels at a visceral level once we've achieved it, right? Now this bit's actually critical because I don't know if any of you have come across Joe Dispenza's work. So that's my second tip for today. Go and look into Joe Dispenza. He's amazing. He sounds a bit like the guy, though, in The Princess Bride, who does, the inconceivable. Sorry, I've probably ruined him for you now. But basically, every time I hear his voice, I'm like, inconceivable. But actually, it's the complete opposite. He's actually manifesting things on a different level, quantum physics and so on. But anyway, basically, to crudely summarize the fantastic work that Joe Dispenza does, essentially, when we're in the right mode, basically kind of like a meditative state, and we visualize how we want to be living our life, our brain actually has no concept of reality, right? Our brain only thinks it knows, right? So, and it relies on sensory information to be able to determine whether things are real or not. So it will start to build. So if you're actually manifesting something for the future and you do this regularly, then your brain will start to build neural pathways for that experience to manifest, because in that realm, when we hit that, time doesn't exist. Our brain doesn't understand the difference between what's happening now, what's reality and what's in the future, and so on. So the more that we connect to an emotional experience that is positive and it's something that we want to be, then things will just start to fall in place and we'll start to actually work, support ourselves into getting to that spot, right? Anyway, I'm sort of going off on a bit of a tangent there. We're not going to focus on breath work and all that meditative stuff. Thais, did you have any other insights, given that you've just done an intensive course in this area recently?
Well, it's a lot to say right now, but yeah, maybe at the end, because yeah, there's just so much to say. I don't even know where to start.
Yeah, no, fair enough. And then the last piece as well is that we want to actually make the goal an appropriate chunk size. So big enough and worthwhile for us to actually go after, but small enough to actually feel attainable. And what we're actually going to do, there's actually a bonus lesson at the end of this, and we're actually going to go from goals to action. So once we've actually sort of set through our goals, then we're actually going to go, okay, well, then what's the next step in terms of actually making that into a tangible, practical action that will help us get to that goal over time. All right, any questions before I move on? There's busy note takers. That's always a good sign. So,
do we have a copy of these slides, Amy?
You will get the copy of these slides.
Okay,
yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, so you don't have to busy make notes, but if that's the way that you learn, then do what you want to do. So, all right. So let me go on to our next thing. So I talked about different types of goals to help with your success. So I'm going to spend a bit of time on outcome goals. We do need outcome goals, but we tend to over-focus on outcome goals. And I think this quote really summarizes what we're trying to achieve here. So if you focus on losing weight, for example, you'll fail. But if you focus on changing the behaviors that made you overweight, then you'll succeed. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So what we're doing is, we'll unpack that a little bit more, but what we're doing is we're shifting our focus from what we want and we're shifting our focus on what we can do. Sorry, just bear with me for a second. My computer's just freezing up a little bit. So forgetting the outcomes. So I know this seems a little counterintuitive, but sometimes you actually need to let go of the outcome that you're actually setting. Now, the point is here, it's a subtle balance, right? So you need to have a vision and an outcome of what you actually want, but then you need to sort of trust that that will happen by focusing on the things that you control. So you almost need to let it go to a degree. And I'm just doing. Now, the reason is, I sort of haven't explained this part, is that when we create an outcome goal, it can actually actively sabotage real progress. And the reason being is because we're so focused on the end result that we, when we haven't got it, then we always see ourselves as being a failure instead of actually celebrating the wins and the milestones, right? So if you're always focused on losing weight and then whatever actions you've done in 2 weeks and closer to that goal, well, you're going to feel like a failure, right? But we can't actually control how much we weigh. And then, we also, when we do weight loss, we actually want that to be over a sustainable period of time. Okay, so I think that will go on. I think the next part will probably make this sink in a little bit more. So yeah, as I mentioned, so the outcome goals, the issue is it's what most people do. That's sort of how we're encouraged, even if you look at that SMART principle, it sort of focuses on the process or the what. But the biggest issue, I guess, is that it really provides little clarity on the how. So it gives you the what, but it doesn't give you any indications around, well, how do I pragmatically implement that? And then what most people do is then they'll start throwing things in and they'll do a scattergun approach, and then they'll have no actual tangible quantitative or qualitative data on how they're actually tracking towards that end result. Does that make sense? Yeah. Well, yeah. And then the thing is as well, obviously as well, if we have no clarity and we're not actually taking in stock the things that we're doing towards those goals that are our milestone or our behavior issues, right? What will happen is that because we don't feel like we're any closer to our goals, then as soon as life gets stressful, we forget about all the little things that we started doing. Or we choose too many little things to do, and then when life gets too stressful, all of them go out the window because we don't know how to dial them down. So I'll move on. So what do we do instead of an outcome goal? Well, I think I've given some hints here, but essentially we focus on, so an outcome goal is something that we want to happen, right? So it's like losing 5 kilos in 6 weeks or running, 5 kilometers in 10 minutes or so on. And the reason that they are, and say we want an outcome like having less belly fat, we can't actually control those outcomes because they're actually affected by a lot more outside factors that we realize. But instead, if we focus on a behavior goal, we can focus on taking an action or a practice or developing a skill that will move us towards an outcome that we want and increase the probability that we'll get the result that we want. Yeah, so for example, when we go back to, okay, you may wish to lose more belly fat. To actually be able to do that, you'll need to exercise regularly, you'll need to potentially manage your calorie consumption, and you'll need to manage your stress and overcome limiting beliefs and sleep well. Obviously, that's just some actions. Each person's different. And that gives you some ideas of the buckets of activities that we need to do, but you need to break that down even further, right? Because that's the how. We'll get into that a little bit later on. So can you guys think of any examples of a behavior goal? Like, does anyone have not a behavior goal. Does anyone have an example of an outcome goal that they have and how they could potentially reframe that to a behavior goal? And I'll give you some examples here. So for example, an outcome goal is get 8 hours of sleep a night, right? And that's just a basic one. It's very simple. But that still doesn't tell you the how. Whereas a behavior goal, create a relaxing sleep routine every night to help me sleep better. See how that's a very tactile, very simple action that can help increase your chances of getting better sleep. So does anyone have an example of potentially an outcome goal, and then, you know, do you want to try reframing it into a behavior goal? It might take 3 minutes here for you guys just to think about that and write one down and then share.
Amy, I've got one. Just to have more energy consistently.
So that's an outcome goal?
Yeah. So how would I, reframe that?
Yeah. So what's one activity? So just think of one behavior that you could focus on and a small action towards that might help towards giving you more energy. You can draw on some of the examples from the Willpower Workshop as well.
It'd have to be, one of the things that was in the Willpower Workshop was like, if you know you've got more energy on the weekend and you've got, like, your week at work is complex with lots of decisions, because I get decision fatigue. So that's why I really identified with that workshop. Then maybe do your meal prepping on the weekend so you have less decisions to make about, because I don't cook anyway, so I rely on my husband a lot. So when the cooking doesn't get done by him, it doesn't get done. I don't eat, therefore I don't have enough energy, blah, blah, blah. So yeah, it's about creating, I don't know how to write that as the behavioral goal, but yeah. Yeah,
so we'll break it down. And don't worry, like we'll get to this, and this is something that we can probably firm up in that extra hour as well. So you've identified one activity that leads to you not achieving that outcome goal, right? And that's not eating consistently.
Yes.
Right? So then we break it down, and it's like, okay, I'm going to eat more consistently every day so that I maintain my normal energy levels.
Yes, that's exactly what I need to do. Thank you. Awesome.
She's like, great, I've already got one of the goals written down.
Thank you.
All right. And we'll move on. Okay. So the next one that a lot of people do as well is avoid goals. So we see this one all the time. Now, this is the surefire way to actually get that inner rebel within you to actually go, well, I'm not going to do the actions actually, because it's not the private group community where swearing is probably a little bit more endorsed. So given that this might be published elsewhere, I'll refrain from doing the visual actions. But yeah, basically, this is where you're going to tell yourself to go get stuffed. You're going to invoke your inner child that chucks a tantrum. And it's basically like a bossy parent telling you to do something, like stop eating ice cream every night. And if you end up telling yourself to just stop doing something, then you'll find that you'll want to do it even more, right? And it's actually the antithesis. Oh, I should stop writing big words that I have to pronounce later, of change. So interesting fact is that most people don't resist change, right? They often resist the fear of loss or losing something. And then I would go a step further to say that it's not necessarily even the loss of something, it's the and the fear of the loss. It's not the fear of the loss of something, like in terms of, oh my God, I can never have ice cream again. That's not the fear. The fear is the ice cream is actually serving a purpose for you that you're not yet aware of. So for example, it could be if I'm like really stressed or I'm feeling really unhappy about something, and ice cream is the way that gives me a little bit of some comfort at the end of the night. Then what you're actually then fearing is either having to face what that is, or not having a coping mechanism to deal with whatever's causing that unhappiness. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And then, of course, if you say, you know, and you're obviously getting some pleasure from whatever that action is that you're not doing. So it is the quickest way to make you feel miserable. And remember, when we wanted a successful goal, we want it to be stated in the positive, because we want to be encouraged and have a good feeling about working towards something as opposed to pulling away from something. And again, it also doesn't provide any clarity on how you're going to do it, right? It's like, stop doing this. Okay, yeah, but how? You know, you don't know yet how to do that. So we need to change your behavior and focus on a behavior that you can do that's stated as a positive, that potentially redirects you from going to that go-to behavior. Yes, so before I move on, does anyone have an avoid goal that they've been working towards?
Justin,
Kim?
oh, no, you go, Kim.
Oh, sorry, no, Kirsty.
Okay. I'm resonating with this because I find that most of my goals are negatively worded, particularly around food. So it's like, don't eat all the things I shouldn't. And then, I'm the example you've just provided about the losing something coping strategy is like, I'm having a moment over here. I'm like, okay, yes.
Yeah, so don't worry, that's common. So and this one is for you, Kathy, because I know you're going to catch the replay. But if you say I don't want to eat as much cake, well, the only thing that your mind is going to hear is cake. Yes, cake, give me cake. I love cake. Yeah, look, we've all been there. So we need to reframe that. So that's, I guess, the other thing is as well, yeah, to Kirsty's point, if there's anything that if you only take away one thing from this workshop, is the first thing and the most pragmatic thing you can do is potentially to reframe your inner talk, right? And to reframe the language. Now, I know that neuro-linguistic programming, or NLP, you know, that's only one way, and it doesn't get deeper into the emotional stuff, which if we get time, Therese can explain a little bit about what breath work does, and that really gets down to the core part. The whole idea around here, though, it's a really easy way for you to catch yourself out and saying something like, oh, well, how can I reframe that in positive? If you get in the habit of doing that, right? And then one, you're building self-awareness around when you're actually having things that are framed in a negative sense. And then you're problem solving around, well, how can I reframe that differently? And then if you get in the habit of that, you'll find that'll cascade everywhere. So I find that, you know, whilst there's a lot of talk about NLP not being the be all and the end all, it's like a good place to start. So if there's any takeaways from this, it's around, if you want to really make any difference in your goals, it's to be really mindful around the way that you look at things, the way that you talk to yourself, and the way that you frame what you're going through. Okay. Got some other notes here, but I might come back to that. So yeah, so what does work instead? So rather than having an avoid goal, we want to go to an approach goal. So again, this is around having something that's positive, that pulls you towards a better, more inspiring future. And it focuses on the wins and the progression, right? So how would this work in practice? Well, say, for example, you love eating sugary snacks whilst watching Netflix. And instead of saying, look, I'm not going to eat, I'm not going to eat lollies while I'm watching, or M&Ms while I'm watching, binge watching a series on the weekend for Netflix. What you would do then is you can go, well, what can I have instead? So you then focus instead on prepping some ready-made fresh fruits, for example, with maybe a bit of cream or something like that, or yogurt that's already ready to go. So as soon as you sit on the couch, you've got something delicious, nourishing. And then what you're doing is that you're getting the joy from that, as well as also still getting your binge on Netflix, right? So you're reinforcing the positive behaviors with that, and you're basically replacing one habit, or you're removing the one aspect of the habit in terms of the trigger, routine, cue, and so on, and the reinforcement. That one I'll unpack a little bit further as we go through this course as well. So is there anything else? So do you guys have, Kirsty, is there anything that comes to mind for you in terms of how you might reframe a goal?
I think for me, it's about, rather than the taking away of the things I shouldn't eat, it should be bringing in the things that, reframing in a way that's like, I will bring more positive and nutritious food into my day-to-day.
Yeah. So it's about
In a
going,
way.
okay, instead of saying, I don't get to have, you go, but I get to have this.
Yeah.
And so you move away from, I don't get to have my chocolates, but it's like, oh, but I get to have this and it's delicious. You know? So around finding something. So that's the key as well. It's not just finding some sort of healthier alternative. It's got to be a healthy alternative that you actually enjoy. So, and, you know, so for example, if you're trying to cut diet soda, then maybe you move to kombucha, you know, if you happen to like kombucha, because it's kind of a bit fancier, right? And it makes you feel a bit sophisticated and stuff, but it's also really good for your gut health. So, and it gives you the bubbles and you've still got a like for like replacement. So it's about finding something that would easily be a replacement for you that doesn't feel like you're missing out or substituting or having to rip yourself off from something, if that makes sense. Okay. Yeah, so an approach goal is basically positive, empowering, has a clear action to it, and there's more to gain versus the loss. So that's what I was sort of trying to get to before, is that you want that balance of, well, what do I have to gain from this action as opposed to what am I actually losing? So you want to make sure that it's always balanced more towards the positive. Okay. Now, this is one that most people don't really talk about, and it's a performance and a mastery goal. And I think this is really important because it's going to be a theme of the course. And if you ever work with me, we tend to focus a little bit more around, well, how do we actually master some skills? So a lot of people, you know, and this is, you know, again, in the corporate world, we always talk about KPIs and actual performance, delivering on results. And there's a big focus on that. And sometimes it's overlooked. People will get into trouble when the how we actually achieve that goal is not actually thought about as well. So if you think about, you know, Monsanto and all the stuff that it did that was unethical in terms of food production and all those sorts of things, then that's when you know that the performance goal is king to everything else that's happening, right? So performance goals are similar to outcome goals, but with the subtle difference that usually a performance goal is associated with external validation. So this is where our competitive nature can work against us. So this is, for example, wanting to win a competition or wanting to beat a record. And essentially you're shooting for a specific performance that will give you a recognition, reward, or kudos, right? And these type of goals have real limitations because, like outcome goals, so many things can influence performance, including tough conditions, feeling off on game day, other people being better than you or more experienced than you, and so on. So, of course, performance goals are, you know, do serve a purpose, right? Because they can actually push you to achieve your best, and you know, and as I said before, ultimately are often assessed or judged in life by our performance among certain things, right? So, yeah, and I mean, you know, on the flip side as well, could you imagine rocking up to work and telling your boss, sorry, no, my KPIs are outcome goals and performance goal orientated, and I need a new set of measures like on the behaviors that I'm doing daily. It's just not going to flow, right? So like we do need to balance the two. Now, this is where mastery comes in, right? So mastery is about the process of continued skill development, which almost always leads to better performance in the long run, right? So focusing on mastery also enables you to experience the joy of learning, which complements our natural tendency towards growth. Mastery is also associated with internal or intrinsic validation rather than external validation. So if you're goal-orientated or achievement-orientated, Kirsty, then this sort of stuff will be right up your alley. Where was I? yeah, so basically what we want to do is we want to find, we want to get you into the habit of wanting to hone skills, that way the actual process of honing that skill, and to Susan's point earlier on around, you know, it's actually the joy around the process, or the growth that you get in terms of trying to reach a goal. So this is around, well, if you're focusing on the skills that will get you there, then it's going to be gratifying no matter what anyone else thinks, right? Because you're going to be focused on doing that and you're going to get joy out of doing that. And then you're already experiencing success as well, right? And we just want to keep building on that. And obviously, the better you get at something, the more you want to do that. Rochelle, with training legs, am I right? Oh, yeah. So just for context, everyone, Rochelle did not train legs before she came and saw me about 18 months ago. And now she willingly does legs several times a week, which is a huge accomplishment, but she's also started to see some progress and therefore wanting to train legs more. So, you know, so sometimes you think you don't like something because you never see the results in them. But then when you actually start getting into the process of honing the skills and being more confident in it, then, you know, obviously the joy of doing legs in itself. I don't know if she's feeling joy right now because we actually trained legs early this morning. But actually probably more than tomorrow when she wakes up with some DOMs. But anyway, we'll move on. Okay. Sorry, I've just got to find my way. So I just want to translate this into a practical example other than Rochelle's one there. If you, for example, a competitive sprinter doesn't just run around hoping to get faster, right? Like a professional or a competitive sprinter, they will do things like look at what skills they can master that will drive the most improvement. So they'll literally break down their sprint into components, right? So some of the things that they might look at is including strength and power training, so they build more leg muscle, because the more anaerobic and fast twitch muscle they have, the more power they're going to get, therefore the more speed. They're also going to, they might also break down a component of their sprinting. So for example, they might just, you know, practice pushing off the block. Like how many times have you seen swimmers just pushing off the block to actually get fast at that so they don't lose time when they're doing the swimming, right? Yeah, so basically they might also do a period of like, so if say you're a 100 meter swimmer or sprinter, they will practice 10 meter blocks of a particular movement at a higher intensity so that they can then sustain a greater 100% intensity and improve their speed over that distance. Does that make sense? So they might train at like 120% of their normal speed for just a 10 meter block because they're not going as fast, so they can push harder. But by doing that, it actually increases their odds that they'll perform better at the whole race, right? So there's things that we need to do when we're looking at our goals around how do we actually hone those skills in to make us better to be able to then do the things that we want to do or achieve the performance we want to achieve. Okay, I have written a lot of notes. I was obviously very keen around this, so excuse me if I keep looking at them. All right. Any questions before I move on? Because that was basically the whole section on the different types of goals, and we'll obviously move into what that means later on. No? Okay, great. So I'm just going to socialize. Now, there's nothing to do here. I'm just priming your mind for a concept that I'm going to be talking about a little bit later on. So who here has read Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People? Yeah, some people have sort of read it. It might be in a while. Maybe they're just skimming through it. Okay, so this is another tidbit. If you're a reader or an audiobook listener, it might be something that you want to revisit. Anyway, so all I wanted to do was just around putting this in terms of why we want to make sure our goals are balanced with approach and behaviour goals. I just wanted to socialise this circle of concern and circle of influence. So the circle of concern covers all wide range of concerns we might have. So for example, it might be the price of petrol, which is completely out of our control, or the cost of housing, or the economic climate. It could be climate change, environmental damage. So these are things that we might care about, but there's nothing that we can actually do anything realistically about that, right? We might have some say or be able to sway in a certain way and participate in certain activities that can get our opinions heard and our voice heard, but it's very difficult for us on a daily basis to be able to implement changes on that. I'm not saying that we shouldn't. I'm just saying, you know, from what we can actually control, a lot of that's outside of our control, right? Whereas the circle of influence is a much a smaller circle which sits inside the circle of concern, right? And this is this is the areas that we can actually do something about. So this might be, for example, my own behavior, what I eat, and how I choose to respond to stress. Now, not all of that will be entirely within our control. It's more within our circle of influence. So there's a subtle difference there. Are you with me? Yeah. All right. Now, I don't want, as I said, I don't want you worrying about that. I'm just priming your mind for another model that comes in a bit later down in the workshop. So forget that for now. Now, just to summarize this section, and then I'll give everyone a couple-minute break just to, you know, do a bathroom break and just to deload. So essentially, the infallible goals, we want to focus on behavior goals, approach goals, and mastery goals. And I'm just going to share a personal experience around how I've done this in the past as well. So, so back when I was doing my Bachelor of Commerce degree, I was returning back to study after about a 5-year break. I was really clear on what I wanted to achieve, but it was all focused on the outcome of obviously getting my degree and performance goals. Like I wasn't satisfied with just coming back and getting my degree. I also wanted to do really well to make sure that I best positioned myself for a choice of jobs, because in that market, you know, it's the same as now, right? You can basically choose which employer you want to go to. And to get there, I actually had to break down my goals into behavior, approach, and mastery goals, right? So my goal was to finish, so my outcome goal was to finish my degree in commerce and get a better paid job, particularly in mining. I also wanted to get into a graduate program, and you needed good grades to be able to do that, which I was able to do. And I also chose a degree that was practical in terms of the context of everything that was happening in my life at the moment, at that time as well. So I could have gone back and, you know, done something in sciences and all that sort of stuff, but I chose to do commerce because I thought it was the most practical in terms of the commitments, in terms of being the quickest path to where I wanted to get to, and also because I was working full time at the time. So when I first started to get back into uni, you know, I thought I was pretty good at my written skills, and I wasn't actually quite getting the grades. They weren't terrible. I was still, you know, passing and getting, getting credits and so on, but I just wasn't satisfied with that. I wanted, you know, distinctions or high distinctions. So anyway, I actually sought some feedback, and what would happen is that what I was writing was fine, but the way that I was actually structuring my essays and my written arguments or my reports and everything wasn't flowing as well as it could. So what I did then is a little known fact. So if you're ever going through uni, go and take them up on this, but they actually run free workshops on how to structure communications. So this isn't how to write and you know, like referencing and all that boring stuff. It's actually around, well, how do you get a concept, and how do you do it for the audience, and how do you structure where you place your headline statements and so on, and then the facts to back it up. So I went and did, I actually took extra classes, did these writing workshops, and then obviously practiced those skills every chance I got. And then within 6 months, my grades jumped to a minimum distinction across the board. And then the next 6 months, I started to get a few distinctions. And then by the end of the degree, I walked out with 3 top students, as well as some awards from government. So I'm not saying this to be braggy. What I mean by this is that all it was a simple of, I'm going to hone this skill, which is just structuring the way that I do my communications. And then by doing so, you know, I eventually got to my outcome goal. But I also knew I wasn't going to do it in 3 months, right? That was over an 18 month to 2-year period. So does that help to kind of solidify what we're working towards here and why that's important? Thanks. And thanks, Susan, for the woohoo. Okay. All right. Now, Does everyone want to take a quick 2-minute break and just refresh or ask some questions? Yeah, all right, let's just pause for a second. If we come back at 10 past 3.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, are we all back?
Right, honey, they're coming back. So
All right. It is a Sunday afternoon, so hopefully people didn't get distracted by Netflix or chilling out on the lounge. The suspense is killing me. Come back. Right, here we go. Awesome. Welcome back. All right, I'll start. Hopefully the others aren't too far behind. So has anyone here watched the show Lucifer? Yes, awesome. Okay, good, great. Because I wanted to make sure I could use this meme and that I wasn't going to be the only one that really loved this show. So we're going to have a bit of fun, right? So, so for those who haven't seen Lucifer, right, it's an awesome show with Tom Ellis, who is absolutely smoking in this series, playing a character named Lucifer Morningstar. Lucifer is essentially a good-hearted, sinful, fun-loving devil with a dysfunctional celestial family, and he decides to vacate in LA. He is unable to lie, and one of his celestial powers is to look into human eyes and elicit what they truly desire so he can strike a deal. Now, is there anyone else that has a better explanation for the show? I kind of just made that up last night, so yeah, perfect.
No,
so
that's perfect.
Tell me, what is it that you truly desire? This is a really important part to our goals. And I didn't start here because counterintuitively, because it was around making sure that we understood our goals so that we could then be open to the idea around actually going a little bit deeper, right? So, so unfortunately, we're unlikely to have a Tom Ellis that we can just, ask to look into our eyes and tell us what it is that we truly desire. But we can still dig it a little bit deeper. And it's really important that we do this because it's really about why we truly want to achieve something. It's about what it'll give us more or less of in terms of our lives. And we need to dig deep enough that it actually hits us emotionally, because when it does, we connect with it, we want to achieve it. And it's really important in terms of actually building that resilience and problem solving. So when you have a clear understanding around why you want something, you will always figure out the what and how to get you there, right? And so it's really the secret to unlocking around how we actually do that. Okay, moving on. Okay, so I should have probably said this in the break as well, but if you want to open up, you're more than welcome to open up the first workbook, which is just called the lesson 1 workbook. And if you refer to page 5, there's some questions. So what we want to do is sometimes when we actually want to achieve a goal, it's likely that we're actually not actually even aware at a conscious level why we really want to achieve that. So we have an exercise in this workbook. Now, you don't necessarily have to fill it out now. You can just have a look at it and have a look at the questions, and I'll see if I can pull it up as well to make it a bit easier. And what we want to do is we want to keep asking we want to keep going deeper through the questions until we, get to the why beneath the why. And ultimately, we keep going until we actually get a feeling or an emotion. And sometimes it's not uncommon to get a little bit welled up as well if we really actually find that why. So what I will do now, it's not going to resonate with everyone, but it's just an idea to start. You'll intuitively, as you spend some time with this, probably find a better way to kind of ask those questions, unpack them, but I've just given you some ideas. Okay. If I can actually even find it. Has everyone got it open, or otherwise I'll share it on the screen? Okay, no, I'll share it on the screen. You'll have access to this as well. Susan, I think you joined a little bit later, but there's actually in the chat, there's actually a link to the Google Drive as well. So if you want to download those documents later, obviously I think I've sent it through our email as well. Yeah, I can send it out after as well. Just bear with me. I'm just gonna have to share a different tab, so just bear with me.
You're on mute for me.
Is that better?
Yes.
Ah, perfect. All right. Well, there you go. I was just miming what you need to do actually, but hopefully the book is pretty self-explanatory. There's a bit of a blurb on page 5. And then what you have is you've basically got, there's a couple of pages here so that you can actually do multiple goals, and obviously you can just print as many as you need or fill it out electronically, however you want. But essentially, yeah, there's some questions around, so what's important? And what will having this achieve this actually give you, and then what's important about that, and then what will that give you, and then what's important about that. So you keep basically doing the 5 whys until you actually hit something. So you might need to ask it several times, and I'll walk through an example in a minute as well. All right, I'm back off mute, and now I'm sharing the slides again. Is that what you guys are seeing? Just checking my reality is the same as yours. Fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. All right, so if we were to use an example, so say, I'm choosing a really basic weight loss one here, but so for example, okay, maybe you want to release like 12 kilos of body fat or weight, and you've got 6 months to do it because you've got like a, basically a destination wedding with the family to go, or, a family trip booked or something like that. So your outcome goal will be, I will release 12 kilos of body fat within the next 6 months. And then the next step is to go, okay, well, why is that important? And you might come up with, well, because I want to look good in my bathers. Yep, most people do, right? Okay, but that still doesn't really give us a real like deep why. So we need to ask a little bit more. So if we said, okay, well, why is that important? Well, it's important because I don't want to feel self-conscious. Okay, well then why is that important? Well, I want to feel confident. And then, okay, well then what's important about feeling confident, right? Because this is the kind of conversations that, most people sort of go through in their head. But why is it so important to feel confident? Or what will it give you? And then in this example, for example, I want to feel confident so I can go kayaking with the kids rather than sitting on the beach. And why is that important? Because this is a special family holiday. We've saved really hard for it, and I want to create wonderful moments for my kids, and I don't want to miss out because I'm sitting on the beach feeling subconscious. So see how that's a much deeper reason that resonates. So it's not about actually how you feel. It's about making sure that you're not robbing yourself of a future experience that is really important to you. So it's around, in this instance, it's someone with kids, and it's about the memories and the experience that they'll be creating with their kids. And they don't want to feel like they're not feeling 100% in being able to be 100% present in that moment because they're not feeling confident around the way that they look. Does that make sense? Right. Okay. Now, we've understood the why. Now, the next piece is around how do we then get some anchors? And what do we mean by anchors? So anchors are basically something that reminds us visually and emotionally around what we're actually trying to connect to. So some people find this useful, others don't. The reason we're also doing for those who are paying clients now, we'll sit there and actually do the vision board. I've actually given everyone access to the link in Canva, so you can actually, obviously you can create your own vision board using, the traditional method of basically a piece of cardboard and some magazine cutouts and so on. But I was trying to think of an eco-friendly version. So I've created 3 different vision boards with a bit of an example on there. So you can actually create it in Canva, and then you've got the option to either print that out or, to save it on your phone as a phone screensaver, or on your laptop and so on. Anyway, back to what I was talking about is the, so basically, even the best of us are forgetful. Life gets busy, stuff happens, and it's really easy to lose sight of what's important, particularly when we're feeling stressed and overwhelmed, tired, all those sorts of things, right? So when we have our goals, we really need to anchor them to our why, so that they're kept front of mind, even if that's on a subconscious level, right? So this is why anchoring can be particularly powerful. So you need to, basically you need to find something in your environment that you often see that's going to help prompt to remind you around why you're doing something, or, if you're having a moment to look back at that and go, okay, I remember the why and why I want to keep doing this. So it's really good to pick at least 2 or 3 anchors that can act on different senses so that you're surrounded by them. So these anchors should inspire you to keep going, and also, interrupt the patterns of ruminating, or when you catch yourself in old behaviors or ways of thinking, you can snap back out of it. So, Rochelle, I don't know if you did this, but I know that when I first started competing, I actually put pictures up of my favorite figure competitors at the Olympia level, and placed them on my mirror in my house. Kim, you would remember that actually when you were first starting to clean my house. You would remember the pictures of, which would have been weird, just like, women in blue bikinis doing like muscle poses, which would be a weird sight for anybody else that didn't understand bodybuilding. But in any case, those were my anchors around, my why when I was first starting to do this. Now, unfortunately, I don't have much space for that, and my husband is a mad Jay Cutler fiend or fan. So my house is lotted with basically Jay Cutler pictures, which isn't inspiring for me because I don't want to look like a giant 5'9", 300-pound bodybuilder. But it is what it is. So I guess just thinking that, what does anyone have any examples of some anchors that you have? And some of these can be sensory, right? Like I know that if I want to relax, then I'll put on some incense, and I'll put on like some meditative music, and I'll chill out in the lounge room. But it's not just the physical. What it does, as soon as I light that incense and put the music on, it just really changes my whole mindset, and then I'm able to relax in the same space in a different way, right? So those are my anchors.
I can share.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, while you've been talking about this stuff, I've been actually drilling in why. And I don't have one right now, but what I'm thinking is, and something that's really resonated with me, is be proud. And, well, here we go. And I'm thinking I need to go buy some shirts that say be proud and wear them every time I exercise.
Yeah, I love that. So it's kind of,
yeah,
that's,
or if I'm not feeling confident or something, then I've got that, like little sayings that I'm physically choosing to wear and make obvious.
Yeah.
And I can't not wear those if I'm not feeling that way, if I'm going to illuminate that to the rest of the world, right?
Yeah, exactly. So
Yeah.
you're actually getting that social proof as well and accountability. And there's a reason why Lorna Jane activewear does so well. And the same with the Nike Just Do It. You know, those slogans, you know, it is about creating an identity. And that's actually really important. So not only are you using an anchor, but you're using an anchor to create an identity that you want to be associated with as well. So you want to be associated with somebody who's empowered, who's doing exercise and all those sorts of things. And then you're putting it out to the world, which is social proof. So it's going to hold you to a different level of count. So that's a really powerful anchor. It's a really good example. Anyone else?
I have my tattoos, or like that are anchors that I didn't realize were anchors until you started talking about anchors. But I got my tattoos to remind me of ways of being. And they, I guess, having a tattoo could be a way that you could anchor yourself in your why.
Very modern one. I like it. It's good. Good. So people will choose, like, I think I still wear a ring that I wore when I made a commitment to myself around some of the different behaviors that I wanted to foster in terms of my relationships, and particularly with my relationship with myself, in terms of focusing on my own goals and stuff like that. I still wear it now.
That. I love that.
So you end up actually doing a lot of different things, but tattoo usually, because tattoos are kind of emotional anyway, and it's a big statement, right? So yeah, for sure, they are definitely an anchor. And if you associate meaning with that, then it's literally carved out on your skin. So can't really get away from it. All right. But then again, you probably need to choose where that tattoo is. There's no point having it on your back where you never see it.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. So the next stage as well is we've actually got to create some space. So one of the most useful parts of the goal setting process is to clear out the clutter in order to make way for something new in your life. So you all would have heard before that out with the old and in with the new. So and this is particularly important as well, if we're thinking about, as Kirsty mentioned as well, about, almost creating an association with a new identity, right? Of somebody that you want to be. Well, clearing out the clutter could be one thing as well. So if there's certain clothes that you never want to be seen dead in again, then you get rid of them. If there's certain things in the house that you don't want to be associated as a person that does that, like whether it's eating certain snacks or whatever, then they go out of your house forever. So there's certain things that you can do in terms of creating the space to actually set up your environment to basically help you, change the behaviors and get on with your goals. And you building again, it's almost in a sense, your space or your general environment becomes a new anchor for your goals as well, right? It's a very subtle, subconscious way. And then you have control over your environment to a degree as well, right? So if you want to journal more, for example, then for me, I actually put out my journal and my pen where I get my coffee, so that I've actually got a very specific action. So once I go and make my coffee, I will sit down at the table and I will journal for a couple of minutes. If I don't feel like journaling for long, then I might only write 2 sentences, finish my coffee and go on with my life. But at least the prompt's there, right? So I don't have to try and, make this new habit. It's just already there and I've got the visual reminder. So this is about clearing the clutter and then being deliberate with your environment to set yourself up for success. Well, and as I said, it's energetically, it's telling your powerful mind that you're ready to really embrace the change. So you're basically putting a vote towards the type of person that you want to be moving forward, right? And your environment is setting you up for success. And I guess, just to hone this in again as well, right? So imagine if you were trying to redecorate your house, but you can't fit in the new furniture because you haven't cleared out the old furniture. So when you think of things that way, so is there anything in your schedule or environment that needs clearing out before you can move forward? And then, so if you go back to that workbook as well, there'll actually be a page where you can basically just map out, sort of things that aren't serving you at the moment in terms of your schedule or environment that you could potentially get rid of. or let go of. So this is a good time to reset as well. So if you've got any things that you set up for last year in terms of reminders or appointments or things that you sort of had there but you're not really paying attention of, this is a way to kind of refresh and reset those and put some more intention around those.
I think for me, it's I've got to sort out my study because it's a nightmare. And go through my clothes, because if we're going on that be proud theme, if it's in the wardrobe and it doesn't make me feel proud, then why have I got it?
Yeah. And then what you can do as well is you can make a much more deliberate intention around that, which is like every time you buy a Be Proud shirt, you've also get rid of an old one that you'll never wear again, or don't want to wear again. So you're kind of like, you're literally physically replacing one item with a new item that you will wear. Yeah, that's a really good one. I like that. All right, so we're going to go into the bonus lesson. So this bonus lesson is free to everyone. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through the bonus lesson, and then for the last hour, for those who aren't yet clients, then basically you'll finish the session at 4, and then everyone else will stay on and we'll actually go through those activities. The bonus lesson is basically around, well, okay, now that we understand about goals, we've, got some ideas around how we create space for them, finding our why and all those sorts of things. How do we then translate those goals into action? So even if we have a behavior goal, how do we actually get them into an action that we can do daily, right? And what are some of the things that we need to do to set that up? So this part is often like overlooked, and I think it's, it's one thing to build the strategy, but you need to have the off ramp, right? So you might be on the highway, you know what road you're going, but how do I actually get you on, like, how do I actually build the ramp up to that freeway so that you can get onto the right road, right? So this is about creating the easiest avenue for you to do something as early as tomorrow that's going to be deeply connected to what you want to achieve for the year. Does that make sense? Perfect. All right, so we're going to talk about the sphere of control, which is basically, I primed your minds before around the circle of influence and the circle of concern. We're actually going to go and do another model, which is a bit more of a pragmatic application of that. So some of you might have seen this already, Kirsty, I think you have, but we'll go through it again. So this is the sphere of control, and I really need to find some other words that I can actually pronounce on a low-carb diet. This is not working for me today. And Kirsty says that she's munching. Is that popcorn you're eating? It looks delicious, by the way. No, popcorn's fine. It's okay. There's no judgment here. It's a safe environment. Okay, it's popcorn. All right. So in our sphere of control, so we talked about the circle of concern and circle of influence, right? So the circle of influence is basically some control and total control, if we were to, bring that diagram and overlay it on this one. And there's some things that we do have total control over. So we do have total control over our actions, behavior, and the amount of effort we put into something. Now, sometimes that is like, not all the time. And yeah, to be honest, that's true, because what will happen is that sometimes we might not have set ourselves up for success. And so we're feeling particularly tired, and it doesn't matter what you do, you're not necessarily going to show up in the way that you want to show up, right? But that's still something that's in our control, because we can learn from that, and then we can set ourselves up for success the next day, right? There's some things that we don't have control over, which I see that that people try and control too much. So instead of focusing on this, they'll try and focus on this, and they'll try and out-engineer a lot of things that are going to happen. But life happens, right? So we don't always have control over our schedule. As much as we like to plan, and as much as we like to do things the way we want to do it, things happen, right? There's always going to be delays. There's going to be other people doing the same thing as you, and it's never going to work 100%. The support that we expect to have, right? Other people are going to be other people, and they're going to do things in unpredictable ways, which makes them, endearing, but also frustrating at the same time, right? So we're not always going to get what we need, and we're not always going to be the type of person that's going to support ourselves as well, right? Like, we're going to have emotional days. We're going to have things where we're just not firing on all 4 cylinders, or however many cylinders you have. I'm not sure. I'm not a car. The other thing is that as much as we can, set up our home and environment, there are going to be things that happen. So I don't know if I shared what happened to me last weekend, but the electrical switchboard at my place actually went up in flames, which meant I had no power, which isn't great when you're prepping for a competition and you need to have your food, electricity, fridge, all that sort of stuff. The interesting thing is that I'm so focused on my goals that I was like, well, I'm just going to book a hotel room and take all my food with me and my air fryer. So I had a romantic getaway with the air fryer and myself, sent a picture to the husband without any context, which is pretty hilarious. But that was so that I could have my last carb meal before going into a keto diet, and I was pretty committed for that. Point is that everyone else in my complex was actually milling around the driveway. Instead of moving their cars off the driveway so that the fire brigade could actually get in there, we're kind of just sort of staring at the fire because none of us could actually obviously put it out because it's electrical fire. You can't exactly use a hose on it. And we didn't have a fire extinguisher. And then when the electrician came, we're standing around watching the electrician because obviously that's going to make the electrician work faster. And Western Power had already said that they weren't going to connect the power until the next day anyway. So I was like, well, I'm out. You do you guys, I'm going. And it actually worked out pretty well. But point is that sometimes things are going to happen and you're not going to have control over theirs and you're not going to be able to anticipate everything. It's around, well, what do you do in that instance? Like, what are the things that you can quickly control and get on top of and how do you work around those challenges? And then, what are the things that you're just going to have to, just be flexible with? Does that make sense? Yeah. And then the other one, yeah, great. And then the other one that I think that a lot of people try and focus on a little bit too much are the things that you can't control. So other people's thoughts and actions, definitely not something you can do. The weather, obviously not. We can't change our genetics, can't change our shoe size, for example. We can't make ourselves taller. Theoretically we could, but not easily. Let's just put it that way. So my point is then, if you've got no control over those, then those are things that we need to be conscious of so that we can quickly change that pattern when we're heading down and trying to fix things that we're just wasting energy on, right? But if we go back to focusing on, well, what can I do in this situation and work with what's actually there, then we're going to feel a lot more empowered and actually be able to stay committed towards our goals and so on. Everyone with me still?
Yes.
Great. All right, I'm just going to read my notes again. No, I think I covered everything there. Okay, so this is, I'll come back to this because I'm just conscious of time, but basically we're just going to work through, so there's actually a bonus workbook to go with this lesson as well in the Google Drive. And it's basically just, here you'll see it's just an empty sphere of control that you can actually put in some of the things in your life that you have some control over, no control and total control over. And you can obviously be as specific as you like because it's just yours. So, I cannot control what my husband eats, for example, might be something that's completely outside of your control, right? But what can you do in that? It's like, well, I can make sure he hides his snacks so that I don't feel the need to enjoy the same, indulgent treats that he's having, right? And then, yeah, it's just reiterating as well my goal and why it's not important. So I've done this as well so that you can actually print that out or put that somewhere as well if you wanted to use that as a really simple anchor just to pull you out of a frame of thinking if that's something that you do constantly, just so that you can start focusing on things and get prompted into taking actions that you can actually, a small step towards something that you can actually control. Now, the other piece that I wanted to do as well was around, well, how do we actually get a goal to action? And so I've got an example here. And Kim, we sort of touched on this earlier when you sort of said, okay, well, I want more energy. And then you sort of went on about 5 different things that you would need to do, including, setting yourself up for success in terms of meal prepping on the weekends when you had more energy. But when we broke it down to the first one, it was around, well, how do we actually eat more consistently every day? So say, for example, you had an objective to lose weight. And I know that's not a SMART goal. It's just an idea of an objective or goal. And then, no, actually, we've got it here. So it's to eat better consistently, right? Would be one of the things that could get you there. Now, there's obviously other actions, but we just want to start somewhere. And then we need to think about, well, what are the skills that we need for each of those goals? So one of them might actually be, well, how do I actually just start getting better at recognizing when I'm actually hungry, and what that appetite feels like, and what I feel like eating. And then how do I actually do a daily practice that will help me to increase that? Well, what if I were to eat slowly at each meal and, actually understand what the flavors are and how it feels and the enjoyment of food and the experience itself. And then the second action or practice that you might have is maybe I'll just eat until I'm satisfied and not stuffed. So as a way to kind of put that in, because a lot of people are like, well, what does that even mean? I've had one coach explain that to me as basically, imagine you're going out on a really hot date and it's only the third date. So you don't want to go all the way yet. You just maybe want to get to second base. So that's what that feels like. So if you want an emotionally and sensory response, that's what we mean. The other skill that you might need that you want to develop is to eat whole foods. And so a daily practice might be replace chocolate whenever I can with a piece of fruit. And a simple other one might be, well, I have cereal in the morning, so how about I actually replace that with oats as something different, to be a healthier option, right? So to see how that is a lot easier to concentrate on a daily than focusing on this the whole time. Yep. And then just to recap that, so essentially it's the SOPs daily practices model. So SOPs usually stands for Standard Operating Procedure, which is why I've chosen the acronym, because I'm trying to get you into that association. And there's basically, sort of 4 things that we want to consider when we're breaking down our goals to action. So 1, we want the simple daily practices to be done easily every day. And you should be about 9 out of 10 confident that you can do that action consistently. It should be organized as well. So we want to break down those skills into defined and sequential parts. So, for example, if you wanted to lose weight and you're not yet exercising, then the simple thing might be to actually start with first things first and actually have a look at what you can do in terms of your food, because everybody has to eat every day. Does that make sense? Or if we're not getting enough sleep and then you're finding yourself just gassing out, and then we might start with sleep, right? If you're not consistently getting, enough sleep to function through the day and it's affecting your appetite and all those sorts of things, then we might just focus on an action to improve your sleep hygiene. And the whole idea is that instead of trying to do everything at once, you're doing 1 or 2 actions on a particular area per day. And some of those can be done concurrently, but the whole idea is just to master one practice consistently for a period of time until it's embedded, until you don't actually have to think about it anymore. So that's basically the mastery, right? And this is what this course is all about. It's actually taking some of those actions and then working with you to actually pragmatically break those down and put them into things. So we're sort of going in, unpacking what you're currently doing and changing that at a very micro level, so that it becomes easy, becomes automatic, and then it sets you up for success. So you're not wasting any more brain power for it, and you can focus on developing better skills that will get you to the outcomes that you want. So the other things as well is, we focus on the practice that's in your way right now as well. So what is the biggest roadblock for you? So as I said before, so for some of you, if you're not exercising, for example, you might focus on the food, but if you're not getting enough sleep, then we might focus on that. So it's all different. And then we need to have it supported as well. So as I mentioned before, if you felt confident enough to reach out in the chat and find an accountability partner, then you can. But this is where, taking some time to do some learning or creating some space for learning, getting some teaching others is sometimes a great way to learn. Getting coaching obviously helps provide that support that you need, because that resource is dedicated to you. Getting mentorship for somebody who's done that besides themselves or had a similar journey. And obviously, as I said, accountability is key, right? So, and you don't necessarily have to have accountability with another person. You can use that social proof. I think Kirsty's example was great by being a jerk, puts it out there around what she wants to achieve. It's saying it to the whole world. So she's almost, she's then on notice in terms of making sure she shows up and does those things consistently to live up to the slogan that she's putting out to the world. Does that make sense? All right, so the confidence indicator, this is one that I like to use because it's a bit more fun. So on a scale of poofed, no chance, buddy, to watch me crush this like the bodies of my enemies, we want to be at this level, right? So 9 out of 10. Watch me crush this like the bodies of my enemies. So every time I ask you how confident can you do this action, you need to respond, watch me crush this like the bodies of my enemies. Now, is everyone ready? Repeat after me. Watch me crush
Watch
this
me
like
crush
the
this
bodies.
like the bodies of my enemies.
Uh-huh.
Yes.
Yes.
Right.
I need that on a shirt.
Rochelle, I think you need to note that down. Awesome. All right. Yeah. So basically, the next part is activities. And then there's actually a bonus as well for those who have actually stayed online. So there's actually a visualization meditation that I got from a heart centering breathwork course that I did recently. So that's actually valued itself at $99. So you guys will actually get access to that in the Google Drive as well. It's about a 27-minute beautiful heart centering and heart visualization meditation. So it's about connecting with what you really want and just spending time visualizing that. So it's a really beautiful meditation, really nice one if you're into that sort of thing. Can help you to get clear on your why and what it is, what your ultimate desired goal is. Sorry, I did try and contact Tom Ellis, but he was not available to play Lucifer to actually just extract what you truly desire. So there's actually a blank goal and action roadmap in the Google Drive as well. And then for those who are still listening or watching the replay, as I said, this was the first lesson of the Incredible You in 2022. And for those who are still interested, because this is in the first week, I am still offering 2 more places at the program for half price. So basically, it's a comprehensive 12-week online course and group coaching program. It's designed to change your relationship with your body, and it's built around the secret weapon of building a healthy lifestyle that's simple, sustainable, and can be done without motivation, hard dieting, or spending hours exercising daily. The whole idea is that you'll learn principles and tools to build a healthy lifestyle that fits into your day-to-day life instead of having to change your life to clear up your free time for a new hobby. Unless, of course, you're Rochelle, then, bodybuilding will be your life, but I think that's what you want, so it's fine. So that's basically what it is. So there's also a couple of payment options as well. So if you pay it upfront, then obviously that's the best deal, but if you can only afford it on a weekly basis, it's less than $50 a week. And if that's still too much, then we basically can split that over 6 months and you can pay $27 a month. So if you know anyone as well that might be interested or benefit from this course, then feel free to connect them with me, and I will book some time to go through that with them. There is also another free gift for those watching the replay or haven't already got access to this. It's the Smooth Operator Smoothie Pack. I think you've already got that, Kirsty. Kim, I might send that one to you as well. So a fun fact, I think, Kirsty, you've had this nearly 8 months and you've been having a smoothie consistently in all that time?
Yep, ever since you've shown me. And I wasn't eating consistently. I was only eating 2 meals a day and not hitting anywhere near the calories I should have been eating. And by having that available to me means now that every day I'm starting the day with a smoothie with a lot of nutrition in it, which I wasn't hadn't had breakfast for years.
Yeah. And not only that, but you're enjoying it, right?
Oh yeah, love it.
Yeah.
It tastes delicious.
Awesome. That's the most important thing. It's also got to be something that we enjoy, right? So yeah. Awesome. All right. So before we actually get into the activities, and since it's I'll stop the sharing into the Facebook group shortly. But did anyone have any questions? No? All right. Well, thank you everyone who watched live, for those who joined and then left, and for those catching the replay. Yes, reach out if you have any questions or would like any more resources. And thanks for joining us. Also, as well, if you've got any feedback around what you found useful, what you'd like to know more about, then I will be hosting some more podcasts and free webinars in the future. The next one is called, as part of the Woke Willpower webinar series. The next one was actually Whipping Discipline's Butt, which is actually a two-part webinar. So I'll be releasing the details of that one shortly as well. All right. Thanks, everyone. I shall just stop sharing for a second and stop the recording.